Hello everybody. Today's first review is going to be of Napoleon, which I gave a 9 out of 10 to. But before we get into everything else, because this was a long movie and a lot of historical facts obviously in this movie, some I had to even look up, just to kind of learn a little bit more about it again, because it's been so long since I've, even dove into like history, which I should probably do more of, really. Especially watching like movies like this all the time. Or watching movies like this from time to time, I guess I should say. Once we get into my DVD collection again, I think there's going to be quite a few historical movies, so yeah. But we'll go over the cast list first, as we always do, and 9 out of 10 for this movie. It was absolutely phenomenal. Now, I think maybe they got some of the... Based on my Google search, they might have gotten some of the dates wrong with the storyline. Now, I'm not really sure. I guess there's no real way to tell exactly when, what happened, essentially, I guess, other than, like, historical records. But, yeah, the divorce, at least in the movie, seemed to happen earlier than what was told by my Google search. So, yeah, very interesting. But maybe there's different historical records from that time. I don't really know. It's kind of interesting to see that it was just put in a different slot in the movie than according to what was, like, from my search from Google anyway. But yeah, Joaquin Phoenix, who played Napoleon Bonaparte, Vanessa Kirby, who actually I forgot was in this movie, but did a fantastic job in her role as well, who played Josephine Bonaparte. Tahor Rahim, who played Paul Barris, who I believe was, like, in the beginning, I believe he was in command of everything, but then eventually Napoleon kind of took over, because Napoleon had, like, his own vision for what he wanted to have happen, right? So I think Barris ended up just kind of giving him free reign over everything. Rupert Everett, who played the Duke of Wellington. Edouard Philip Onnet, who played Tsar Alexander. Miles Jupp, who played Emperor Francis I. Sinead Cusack, who played Letizia Bonaparte, and Anne Mon, who played the Duchess Marie Louise. Now, there was other characters in this movie, but I just thought those were, like, obviously the two mains, and then the other ones who kind of stood out the most, I suppose. And then obviously the ones who were, like, mentioned, I guess, throughout the movie, obviously due to, like, the history behind everything, right? So we'll actually go back, because, yeah, there's a lot to cover for, like, historical purposes in this movie. So, this was, well, we started out in 1789 during the Revolution of France. So I'm not exactly sure everything that takes place in the Revolution of France, but it seems to be a lot of political stuff. So, like, a lot of political turmoil, and it seems like the government's kind of controlling the people, right? Not really allowing them to have, like, any sort of freedoms or anything for that matter. It kind of seems like the government kind of owns the people in a sense. And so we go to Toulon, which is a French encampment, on 16th of December 1973. And it seems that the British are blocking the ports. So I believe maybe the British had kind of taken over the French government, and then, of course, the people are going to try to rise up against that, right? So Napoleon becomes Brigadier General after he is able to take back the ports. Like, he comes up with this elaborate plan. Like, his mind was so advanced as far as like, battle planning went, and he seemed kind of, like, almost scared to go into battle. But I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of, warriors and stuff say, if you don't have fear going into a battle, then you're just kind of a little bit blind to what's actually going on. Like, a little bit of fear isn't necessarily a bad thing, because then you're kind of more, I guess, in tune with everything that's happening around you. If you have, like, zero fear, you're just kind of going to run in there with a clouded mind, I guess, in a sense. it's kind of a weird thing to think about, that, you know, fear is a important part of battle, but yeah. But then when he gets in there, he seems to almost be in control of everything too. Even though he didn't necessarily seem like the toughest warrior of all time, he definitely like was very aware of his surroundings and everything. So yeah, like he was able to pull out of battles when he didn't need to be there, and he was able to, you know, kind of give it his all when he needed, when his men needed him the most, right? So then we get to the end of the Reign of Terror on the 27th of July, 1794. So this was a year after Napoleon has become Brigadier General. And I guess 41,500 prisoners were released. So I suppose most of them were probably wrongfully accused of the crimes that they had committed. And a lot of it was, you know, like straight to the guillotine sort of thing. So kind of crazy. And then we go to the Survivors Ball in Paris on the summer of 1794, and it seemed to me like Napoleon was kind of not really into like the whole theatrics side of things. Like he was a very quiet, sort of reserved man in his normal life, but when it came to like battles, he was a pretty intense individual. And then we go to the Royalist insurrection on the 5th of October, 1795. And Napoleon then gets married to Josephine at that point. And then 3 years later, I guess, he goes to Egypt to liberate them. And from his narration, he's already taken Italy. And then, of course, plans to take England next because that is their main enemy. So I guess at that point it would have been England, but it technically was it not the British? See, it's very hard. I don't know whether it was like the entirety of England or just like part of England itself. Yeah, I guess England, yeah. I don't know if they were separate at that point in time or not. So we'll just say England. Anyway, so Napoleon, while he is in Egypt, discovers that his wife is cheating on him, so he returns home after getting news of that, of course. Even though he had been, you know, having his own affairs too, obviously, so it was kind of crazy that he would even really care. But also, Napoleon was traveling around the world to, and when he was sleeping with somebody, it was only for the purpose of having a child too, so I mean, yeah, it's such a weird, like, double standard there with him. Him having affairs too, and then, you know, his name looking bad because his wife's having an affair at home. But honestly, I wouldn't even care at that point, probably, if I was having my own affairs, right? Like, you're already making yourself look somewhat bad as it is anyway. So then we go, of course, to the coup on the 9th of November, 1799. With Napoleon forcing members out of government positions. So at this point, he's kind of like trying to overtake everything, so that he has more power within the government himself. So Napoleon meets with Armand de Caulaincourt, who is the advisor to the First Council. And Napoleon kind of discusses with him, like, Alexander from Russia is coming up, very young himself, and Napoleon wants to ally with Alexander. And of course, it seems that Alexander doesn't really want to ally with him at all. So eventually, they do go to war a little later on. So Charles de Talleyrand, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs, warns the enemy to take Napoleon's peace offer or suffer the consequences, basically, because he knows that Napoleon will try to find peace regardless of how he has to find it, right? So we go to the coronation. Eventually, I guess kind of Napoleon takes a little bit of a deal with them to become king, or emperor in this case. So we have the coronation on the 2nd of December, 1804. Napoleon becomes emperor. And then Tsar Alexander the First and uh, Tsar Alexander the First, Emperor of Russia, and Francis the First, Emperor of um, Austria, seem to be, kind of forming their own allegiance at this point. And I believe that, so that was, the Emperor of Austria. They joined forces, and I think that was the first time that Alexander had kind of like betrayed Napoleon in a sense, because Napoleon had made the deal with him to become emperor, so on and so forth, blah blah blah. And then, of course, Alexander seems to just kind of do his own thing. So, of course, Napoleon, being the man that he is, knows that he can easily take out both armies with pretty much with some ease, right? Just based on his like mind when it comes to combat and battles and planning. Like his strategies were always just like 2 steps ahead of the enemy for sure. So Napoleon is able to trick both of those armies into thinking that they have the higher ground, and then he surrounds them slowly and just pushes them out onto the ice, pretty much drowning most of both of those armies. So of course then he meets with Francis the First after defeating him and Alexander and offering peace. Of course, at that point, when your army's been defeated that badly, you're going to take that offer. So Napoleon then gets divorced, and he sends Josephine to Chateau de Malmaison in Rueil, France. That way he can still visit her, even though they are divorced, because he did truly love her. I guess the only 2 people that he really truly did love was his mother and her. And you can kind of tell when, like a little later on in the movie, when he gets sad about her passing, that he really did care for her, but he just wasn't getting, like, he wanted an heir to the throne, right? And she wasn't able to provide that. So eventually he just gets divorced from her and then marries somebody else. So then we have the Treaty of Tilsit, which is the alliance of France and Russia in July of 1807. So Napoleon marries Marie Louise to form an alliance with Austria. So I believe maybe at that point Alexander might have been in control of Russia and Austria, because I believe he was marrying the eldest daughter, and she was young at that point in time. Like, historically, it says she was either 18 or 19 when she got married to Napoleon, who would have been around 40 at that time, and that's just absolutely crazy. But yeah, again, that was just what happened back then, to kind of, I guess, form stronger bonds between families and form stronger alliances between certain people, right? Which is just absolutely bizarre to me, but yeah, they're very different time back then for sure. So then Alexander betrays Napoleon again, opening his ports to England while taxing the French for what he is doing. So then we go to the invasion of Russia in June of 1812. And then Borodino, which is like the huge battle between him and the Russians again, on the 7th of September, 1812. And the French lost 28,000 men that day. So not as many as the Russians, obviously, but so then after that, they decide to march towards Moscow, where it seems everyone has fled. And then Alexander returns to burn Moscow down to the ground. So Napoleon didn't think he would have the guts to do that. So Napoleon says they will now march towards St. Petersburg. And of course, they're going to be doing that during the Russian winter. And eventually, he just loses so many men that they can't even continue on and they have to return home. So by December of 1812, only 40,000 of the 600,000 men Napoleon took with him had returned. So Napoleon is exiled, and I believe after 3 years, he decides to come back after he gets news of Alexander visiting Josephine. So it seems that Alexander is trying to work his way under Napoleon's skin any way he can. And then at that same time that Napoleon is returning, Josephine does fall ill, yeah, Napoleon returns from exile. He is asked to surrender and be put back on the island he was on, I suppose, but yeah, he does not want to do that, and his army um, still follows him quite closely, even after losing so many men underneath him. A lot of them recognize him anyway, and they're still very loyal to Napoleon, so that was kind of crazy. So Josephine then passes away, unfortunately. And then we go to the Congress of Vienna on March of 1815. And this was Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, that was talking there. And he has decided that Napoleon needs to go. That I guess Napoleon should have went a long time ago. Why did they ever let him get so much power over everybody, sort of thing. And of course, you would think that Napoleon would be smart enough knowing that two armies with so many more men than him were going to be attacking, that he would have some sort of better battle plan than just like a full frontal assault. But I think maybe Napoleon knew that that was going to be his last battle, and he just wanted to have, he just wanted to see if he could try to withstand as long as he could, I suppose. It was kind of unfortunate to see that little bit of a downfall. Like, it was almost like he became too greedy at the end, and just thought that he could win no matter what, without any consequences. But he needed a better strategy than what he had for that battle. I mean, it was kind of hard because it was more like an open field battle, so there weren't very many places that he could maybe have any sort of like surprise attacks, I suppose, because it was very easy to see in an open battlefield. But also, I think they were kind of expecting, like the English were kind of expecting something to happen before Alexander and his army arrived. But yeah, nothing ever came of that. So yeah, on the 18th of June, 1815, Napoleon makes a stand against the Allied forces of England and Russia. Napoleon then surrenders, so we go to the HMS Berlephon? Berlephon? Anyway, sorry if I'm butchering the name of that boat, but this was in Plymouth in July of 1815. So they kind of make a deal that they will exile Napoleon once again, and eventually he passes away on the 5th of May of 1821, so not that many years after he was exiled. And so 6 years after he was exiled to St. Helena, or Helena, I suppose. So then, at the very end of the movie, they tell you that Napoleon led 61 battles while he was in charge. At Toulon, he had 6,000 dead. Marengo, he had 12,000 dead. Austerlitz, 16,500 dead. Borodino, 71,000 dead. Waterloo, 47,000 dead in one day. And in the invasion of Russia, 460,000 dead. So in the time that he led from 1793 to 1815, he lost over 3 million men, which is crazy to think about, that that's how big of an army he had, and he still wasn't able to defeat or finally win in the end. And I think that's just because, as clearly as you can see, like as he went on, he just became a little more greedy and ended up losing more men during each battle, which is unfortunate because he had such a large amount of men in the beginning, or such a huge army, that he could have easily conquered probably everything if he had just been, smart like he was in the first few battles, right? And came up with a little bit of a better plan. But so I guess his final words, according to this, were France, army, and then Josephine, and then he, passed away. But kind of crazy. I don't know if that part's actually true. I don't think we'll ever really know. But yeah, crazy to think about that those could have potentially been his actual last words. But yeah, this was a really good movie. Ridley Scott was a director, and I think that, yeah, he did a fantastic job of making you kind of like feel like you were in the film, and there was a few comedic moments that didn't feel forced in this movie, so that was good. Um, just some of the conversations between him and Josephine were absolutely funny, especially the ones where they're like talking about the affairs that they were having. There's just some lines in there that were delivered perfectly to make you laugh, but it didn't feel like it was, a forced thing. And yeah, just the cinematography and the CGI in this movie, if they did use, I think a lot of it might have been practical effects, which definitely made it feel a lot more real when you were like in the battle situations for sure. Because yeah, it just all the battles were super intense, and yeah, it's just there's something just exciting about like old battles like that just seem way more intense as just opposed to like battles today. It's just, yeah, just riding out into a field just seems like such a warrior thing to do. And I would not want to be those poor drummer boys. I would not want to be one of them. Like, they just had no defense, and they were getting hit by cannon fire all the time. It's just really unfortunate for them. So, yeah. But anyway, really good movie, 9 out of 10. I would highly recommend watching this if you haven't seen it. It is on Apple TV, or you can also watch it on Prime too, I believe, if you subscribe to if you subscribe to Apple TV through there as well. So yeah, those are the two places that I know of that you can watch it. If not, you can always check IMDb for places to watch these movies. Sometimes some movies come and go from that, so you might have to look it up on Google to see if there's any other places to watch it. But yeah, would highly recommend watching this movie if you haven't seen it before. Other than that, I guess I will see you guys in the next review. Bye-bye for now.